Hi everyone, Lila's here from Spirit. Welcome to Friday Night Frights and the Fireside story. My husband's trying to sneak out of here quietly and he's not doing it very quickly. Sorry. So tonight when I left last year with the teaser, I told you I was going to tell you the story of one of the deadliest mass murders in our community and Alberta. Now I know everybody's probably thinking the Cook murders. But no, there was another mass murder in our community here. On June 3rd of 1956, 64 years ago, there was a murder. So let's read the story out of the Fireside storybook and learn what we can about this tale. Let's see what we've got here. Well, there's no words. That's strange. There's still no. Maybe it's just too dark. I can't see very well. Let's get a flashlight. Oh, it's a trick book. So right, we're going to talk to you tonight about the Clark murders. So on June 3rd of 1956, Stettler Social Credit MLA John Clark shot his family, a farmhand, and a visitor at the family farmhouse before turning the gun on himself. At the time, the police believe Clark had a mental breakdown. So John Eder Clark was born March 29th, 1915. He was a provincial politician, a teacher, and a farmer from the Erskine, Alberta area. He served as a member of the Legislative Assembly of Alberta from 1952 until his death in 1956. Clark committed one of the worst mass murders in Alberta history before taking his own life. Now, hold up the book. I've got a picture of John here. Oops, sorry. That's him. He was a nice-looking man. Obviously, he had some troubles, though. That's why it's important to talk to people. So let's learn a little bit about their early life. Clark was a part-time school teacher. He inherited the family farm founded by his father and farmed a total of 1,000 acres of land. He married his wife, Margaret Dinwoody, in 1947 and had 4 children with her. They lived in the 2-story, 6-room frame house built by Clark's father that John had been born and raised in. So now it talks about he was a farmer, and in some of the articles you will find it says that one of the reasons they thought this may have happened was that he had kind of run into some bad luck with farming. The dairies wouldn't take his milk, and he was having just not a very good time. And with his mental illness, that made things worse. Now his political career. Clark ran for a seat on Alberta legislature in 1952 in the Alberta general election as a social credit candidate in the electoral district of Stettler. The 4-way race was hotly contested, with Clark winning on the second vote count to hold the district for his party. He was very charismatic, and he seemed like he was very popular with the voters. Clark ran for a second term in the 1955 Alberta general election. He won a sizable majority, defeating 2 other candidates to hold his seat. And that's how popular he was. John was to have traveled to Saskatchewan on June 1st, 1956. Now, that was just 2 days before the murders happened, to help manage the social credit campaign in the 1956 Saskatchewan general election. He failed to show without any explanation. So many think probably something happened during that time, and he had a mental breakdown. So let's talk a little bit about what actually happened. So on June 3rd, 1956, Peter Parrott, a neighbor residing on a farm leased from Clark next to his farm in Erskine, had stopped over for a social visit. Parrott happened upon a grisly mass murder scene, finding 7 people who were shot at least once through the head. One victim had been shot multiple times. Now I've researched this a little bit, and from what I can find, I've not found the name of which one of the victims was shot multiple times. So police were mystified that there were no signs of a struggle. The victims included Clark's 36-year-old wife, Margaret, their 4 children, 8-year-old Janina, 7-year-old Ross, 5-year-old Anne, and 4-year-old Linda, as well as 20-year-old farmhand George Anderson and a 20-year-old Canadian Navy sailor, William Olha of Medicine Hat. William was visiting the Clarks during his leave. William had actually worked at the Clark farm when he was younger, and he became very good friends with the Clarks. So unfortunately, he picked the bad time to come and stay with them. Police said it appeared Clark left the farmhouse shortly after the shootings. Pete Parrott, who discovered the bodies, stated, "I walked into the house from the back door and saw Anderson laying on the floor. There was blood on his face." Parrott said, "In the bedroom, I found the 4 children placed neatly, side by side, from oldest to youngest. Upstairs, the sailor was laying in bed as though asleep, but there was blood on his face. In a downstairs bedroom, Mrs. Clark was laying in bed. She, too, was dead." Now, I can't imagine coming across a scene like that from those poor children. So Parrott raced 6.4 kilometers to the home of Clark's uncle and called police, who, along with an ambulance, sped 26 kilometers to the scene from Stettler. 2 of the victims were found alive. William and one of the Clark children, and I later learned through research that it was Linda, the littlest one, were rushed to the hospital. William died 2 hours later, and Linda died on the way to the hospital. A veteran police officer told Journal reporter Eddie Keane the crime scene was the most tragic and pitiful he had ever seen. It appeared Anderson had completed morning chores around the farm as pails of fresh milk sat near the back door where the body was found. There were bowls of cereal the children had prepared stood on the kitchen table. Bloodstains in the grass at various points in the yard indicated 3 of the children had been shot outside and the killer had carried them back into the house. The RCMP descended on scene with 14 special field agents. Clark was not among the dead and was not on the scene. Now, at first, the search was actually for a missing person. They didn't suspect John as the murderer. A mass search began to locate his whereabouts. RCMP reports say that search involved 21 to 32 officers. That's a lot of officers for the Erskine area at that time. They traveled the range roads and on horseback with a team of tracking dogs. So they brought in a lot of equipment and a lot of people, a lot of resources to try to find him. The south shore of Buffalo Lake was also being dragged. In Edmonton, security at the legislature, where John had been an MLA since 1952, was stepped up. Well, yeah, I can imagine. At least half a dozen uniformed and plainclothes RCMP officers patrolled the corridors and entrances below the main lobby. A separate aerial search was conducted by a team of 3 Mounties on a Royal Canadian Air Force Otter. These Mounties are the ones that spotted the body of Clark from the air in a few hours after their search had begun. Now, this search was not just the day of the murders, it was actually longer than that. It was the 2-day manhunt ended when police found the body of Clark submerged in 3 feet of water in a pond on his farm, approximately 600 yards from the farmhouse where the murders took place. He had a single self-inflicted bullet hole through the head and was found with the murder weapon lying at his feet. Now, some say this is very unusual, but because John had a big fear of water, they didn't think that he would actually go kill himself in the water, but that's where he was found. John was adorned in his night attire as if he had been preparing to go to bed. John had a history of minor nervous mental trouble, had bouts of depression, had spoken of suicide, and had spent time in hospital under a psychiatrist's care. Now, when we talk about spoken of suicide, it was just a few days before this had happened. He had been telling one of his friends he thought he would just walk into the lake and never come back. So it'd be interesting to know what was going on. John had been suffering from frequent nervous breakdowns in recent years. He was hospitalized for a month and a half in 1954 after one such breakdown. He had also had one during the spring session of legislature in 1956. At the time of the mass murder, it was considered the worst such event in Alberta's history. So who would have thought that Stettler's little community here would have had 2 mass murders in a matter of like 3 years? That's why it's neat to kind of find out the history of our surrounding areas. Now, if you go to the Calgary Herald archives and look up June 4th and 5th of 1956, there's articles on there about the murderers and what happened and the search for him. It's really quite interesting. Now, they are buried close to here still, the whole family. And I will go out in the next week or so before my next fireside story anyways, and try to get some evidence to see if any of them are around. Now, the reason I say this is because it's going to lead into our next fireside story. I don't know if many of you know or have heard of the 601 ghosts. The story is that there are a ghost of 2 children, I think both girls, on the highway 601, not far from the graveyard where the Clark children are buried, not born. So that leads to speculation that maybe these ghosts are the ghosts of the Clark children. Now, I've heard that it's usually children that see these children, so I might have to borrow somebody's child if you have one that's available. Mine aren't children anymore. And take them out, and we'll take our equipment out there. We'll take a night camera, we'll take our ghost box, and we'll see if we can come up with any evidence to see if the stories are true or are they just urban legends. So that's what we have. If you have any details about this, if you have any stories you'd like to share, you'd like to see on here, because we couldn't do any investigations this year because of COVID. I would love to hear your stories and research them, see what we can get out to you guys. I will try to get to the places myself and see what we can come up with, if we can find any evidence, and take you on the journey that way. If you have anything, just shoot me a message at spiritab.hunters@gmail.com. Or you can go on to Facebook and you can leave me a message on there. That'd be great. I'd love to hear your stories, and we'll go from there. Thanks for joining me for the first fireside story, and hopefully you have a frightfully good night. Thanks for joining in. This is the Fireside Stories, which will be coming back to you at the end of July, which is the last Friday, July 31st. We'll have the next story to tell. Thank you. Have a good night.